raccoons. My name's Matthew and this is Alex. Today we're going to go over the short, in-depth, very interesting review of the 18th century French history in 3 minutes or less.
As told through their cultures, traditions, music, maybe even some cooking. It's going to be a great time, so why don't you guys stick around? Okay, Preston, I know it's a long title, but Nicole was supposed to come up with the title and she got COVID, so. Anyways, what were we saying earlier? Matthew, did you know that during the 18th century in France, music was kind of just like, it was the classical music, it was just like it, except they had larger orchestras and they made the music more colorful, and it almost told a story through its brilliance in different rhythmic patterns.
I'm pretty sure they told that story through opera, but yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Very, very intelligent.
You know, that's a great point. While we're on the topic, hey Preston, do you mind playing a song from one of these shows? Thank you, Preston.
Yes, Les Deserteurs by Pierre-Alexandre Monsigny is the story of a soldier deserting his camp when he hears of his wife's deceptive, quote-unquote, decision to marry her cousin. He initially falls for this trick, leading him to await execution, only to be later saved by the king. If you were paying attention, you would have noticed a quick change of pace from a delicate melody to a booming burst of energy, followed by a somber passage of harmonic tones. This transition of music depicts the feelings of the soldier as he begins the story happily, only to be met with the news of his unfaithful wife, and then grief and reaction. This is followed by another movement of fast violin passages representing his running motion from the war, hence the name Les Deserteurs. See, the melody follows the story, as was a common theme within these opera comiques of the French era. This music resembles classical ideas, as both forms of music have very clear melodic motifs or themes that last throughout the song and are constantly referenced. Also, as Alex said earlier, the amount of instruments you hear is significantly larger than a normal Baroque or Romantic piece. 18th century French music is made to tell a sensible story with clear and defined passages of music that is predictable and follows the visual storytelling of an opera. Here, see if you can guess in the story of our next piece, Richard Coeur de Lion by André Gretry. If you couldn't guess by the triumphant fanfare of the star of this performance, it is a royal king. Gretry's masterpiece mimics the same story-like melody that Monsigny depicts in his Les Deserteurs to reference the plot of the opera comique. Next up, the French Mozart. François-Adrien Boieldieu wrote with light Parisian elegance with a similar storytelling method from his operas. However, this piece we just listened to is an excerpt of one of his masterpieces of harp repertoire, written in 1800-1801. This spiritual heir to André Gretry also showed a shift in the opera comique era by changing the style to a more romantic one rather than classical, with a focus on dramatic scenes and less comical ones. French music during the 18th century was focused on the opera comique, yet flowed as easily as the stories they told.
That music was absolutely fantastic, if you ask me. It was such a hot, sweaty, and amazing experience. What did you think, Matthew?
I am drenched, head to toe.
Well, that's what she said. Okay, moving on anyways. So, the next subject we're going to actually cover is we're going to go on to discuss the art and literature of this time. Personally, I don't know too much about it, but our little COVID buddy Nicole came in through, and she actually discussed a lot about it. Okay, so I believe it had something to do with, like, it was a very naturalistic look of the painting, and it was all nature-based, very simple and expressive figures, and they started to really try to discuss the scientific elements of it.
Due to time constraints, we're gonna have to show the baking process done in the corners during the art analysis section. This is also just the dough and lamination process, not the filling process, as time does not allow us to do that.
Society through an Arcadian lens, which is a hypothetical utopian pastoral society where everything is in harmony with nature. Using bright colors, he painted narratives occurring usually at balls, festivals, and other gatherings. He painted for many high officials such as Louis XIV and Frederick II. In this piece, Dance Before a Fountain, Lancret uses fête galante, using formal figures in carefree situations. This illustrates the people in the painting breaking from the strict conformity of the time period. The first two paintings in Lancret's set of four ages of man features childhood and adolescence. In childhood, it illustrates children playing games. Painter, otherwise known as the master of still life, he utilized light diffusion and balanced composition for his works. He painted many pieces of seemingly mundane things, such as kitchen maids, children, and other typical activities. Louis XV granted him living space in the Louvre and many showcases in the Salon. Salon. It's pronounced Salon. The Ray. This was one of Chardin's first paintings, meant to shock and dazzle. It had a haunting beauty to it, juxtaposing life and death, as well as Chardin's signatures of low lighting and mundane pieces. The Ray is still one of his most admired works. Voltaire, or François-Marie Roy, is one of the most famous French writers in history. His works focused on the criticism of bigotry and tyranny in a satirical manner. He was very intrigued with England's beliefs as they tolerated freedom of thought and were allowed many other freedoms there as well. Voltaire was eventually exiled to England and became enthralled with much of English culture. Many of his most famous works were banned because their content did not coincide with the monarchy. Okay, I'm going to read Candide chapter 4. Like an excerpt of it. Candide, moved even more by compassion than by horror, gave this appalling beggar the 2 florins he had received from James, the worthy Anabaptist. The apparition stared at him, shed tears, and threw his arms around his neck. Candide drew back in terror. "Alas," said one pauper to the other, don't you recognize your dear Pangloss? "What are you saying? You, my dear master, you in this horrible condition. What misfortune has befallen you? Why are you no longer in the most beautiful of castles? What has become of Lady Cunegonde, the pearl of young ladies, and the masterpiece of nature?" "I'm at the end of my strength," said Pangloss. Candide immediately took him to the Anabaptist stable, where he gave him a little bread to eat, and when he had revived, he said to him, "Well, what about Cunegonde?" "She's dead," replied Pangloss. Candide fainted at this word. His friend brought him back to consciousness with some bad vinegar that happened to be at the stable. Candide opened his eyes and said, "Cunegonde is dead. Oh, the best of all possible worlds. Where are you? But what did she die of? Was it from seeing me kicked out of the beautiful castle by her father?"
Pierre Augustin Caron de Beaumarchais
was a French author, most famous for his plays Le Vivere de Seville and Le Mariage de Figaro. His plays were class-conscious, with his second play criticizing aristocratic privilege. He went on royal missions for both Louis XV and Louis XVI, later in prison during the French Revolution due to his wealth. His only really famous works were those 2 comedies. Okay, I'm now going to read the Vivere de Seville at the beginning part. "That man looks familiar." "He's no priest. He looks like Count Almaviva." "I do believe that's Rogue Figaro." "It is indeed, my lord." "You imbecile, if you say one word." "Yes, now I'm sure I recognize you. Friendly as always, your excellency." "Call me Lindoro, you fool. Isn't it obvious that I'm in disguise? To avoid suspicion, let's pretend we're gossiping. Well, did you get that job I recommended you for?" "Yes, my lord. The minister was so impressed by your recommendation that he made me chief assistant to the doctor."
You know, that was some amazing inspirational and educational art, I must say, Matthew.
It surely was beautiful.
No, it is getting, like, really hot in here, though.
Whoa.
Anyways, moving on. Yes, Preston, we're moving on. Festivals, the fun time in France. Everybody was having fun, but they had to have some, exceptional, extra special fun occasions. That's why they had some of these festivals. One notable one was Lyon Fête des Lumières. It was a great time. It's the city of lights in Lyon. They have this amazing, spectacular thing that still happens to this day. But do you want to know something really fascinating about these festivals? Matthew, they were all centered or based upon, what's the word?
8 pound, 6 ounce, infant newborn Jesus.
Oh yeah, Jesus. That's the word I was looking for. And you know what? All the French people, they thought Jesus rocks, I must say. They thought Jesus was absolutely spectacular, so they wanted to celebrate him. And they brought this light all throughout the city, even to this day. As you can see by our beautiful lights that we have decorated around the mantle, we are currently celebrating this festival ourselves. I'm gonna let the frame cut over as I do a magic trick. Matthew, are you ready?
Yes.
If you guys watch very, very carefully, I'm going to take my coat and I'm going to place it over Matthew. And just like that, Jesus in the lights. Jesus in the lights, I say in frame. Let me slide on back over. Now, to thee, Matthew Waterman, to give you more information on this festival.
Lyon Fête des Lumières is celebrated on December 8th with the same bright lights that strangle Matthew. Matthew, fact.
Now, first of all, you're going to see this light, and you know it's a light because it emits light.
Originally, the inauguration was interrupted by flooding, delaying the delivery of the statue of the Virgin Mary on Fortville Hill. So, the candles were placed in front of windowsills and balconies and within glass cases, symbolizing the unity and the spirit of solidarity. Matthew, fact.
Second off, light is energy, which is how the light emits more light.
This tradition began in 1852 and continues to use extravagant light shows to this day. Matthew, fact.
Now, another interesting fact about light is that light travels at the speed of light.
The light was a symbol of a renewal of identity for the city and takes a journey through dreams and magic. And Matthew, fact.
And lastly, because light is an energy, light also gives off heat. Thank you, and those are the facts of the day.
Thank you, Matthew, for those wonderful facts. Our next festival is La Fête des Rois, or the Feast of the Kings. This festival, celebrated on January 6th, centers around the cake that you see Matthew currently baking. Galette des Rois, or the pastry of the king, is used to determine the king or queen of the day through a small object placed within the cake. When the cake is distributed, one person will have a small object and the opportunity to wear the crown for the day. This festival relates to the 12th night when the king brought a gift of gold to baby Jesus. This is a chance for families to gather around and eat cake in a festive, fun time.
Now, we just want to take a second here to thank all group members that were present for the recording session. From Preston, Alex, and myself, because I'm going to thank myself.
No one else.
We did great filming this. I mean, no one else could have gotten the tattoos on our chest. No one else could have done it.
We'd also like to say a quick thanks, not to Nicole, of course, but to Mr. Skiles, the most wonderful AP European history teacher that has ever existed, one who has given us so many opportunities to show off our creative skills, our interesting use of light, color, expression, male secretaries, and most importantly, those beautiful jawbones, as Matthew was telling me about earlier, that Mr. Skiles possesses.